The Midnight Run by Midnight Shadow,
So,
asked Twilight, chewing carefully on the clover leaves and swallowing before speaking again.
this lunch was nice and all. What exactly did you want me to talk about? Well, sugar, we got this thing we kinda do. A thing?
Asked Twilight, raising an eyebrow.
Yeah, at night.
Twilight grinned suddenly.
I didn't think you were into that sort of thing.
Applejack blinked, opened her mouth, closed it again, and then laughed.
That's not what I mean, Twilight, and you darn well know it. Well, explain the thing then.
Twilight laughed too, sipping a drink of water to hide her mirth.
It's not something we really should discuss in public like this. I wrote it all down in a letter. Here.
Applejack hoofed over a sealed envelope, glancing surreptitiously side to side as she did.
Why all the secrecy? It's kinda the sort of thing you don't talk about.
Mumbled Applejack, almost under her breath.
It's nothing illegal, is it?
Twilight's eyes went wide as her ears perked up forwards. What in equestria was her friend talking about?
Oh, no. Nothing like that. It's just kinda special. Kinda private. But it's not.
Twilight did her best to mime with hoof gestures certain lewd activities.
No! Oh gosh, no. Remember, you were talking about magic of friendship and wanting to know more? Special ways we was here being friends? You're sounding more suspicious every word, AJ. Spit it out, can't you? We go for a run, okay?
Blurted the orange earth pony, like it was a confession.
A what?
Twilight blurred retort was full of sarcasm.
A run. We run. Together.
Explained Twilight, explained Applejack, flustered, almost pained to be opening her muzzle.
We? We who? No. You don't ask names. You know me, that's enough. I'm always one who invites. But it's the herd that decides. The herd? The herd. Can't explain it, Twi, not really. You just follow them instructions in that there letter. Be where it says, when it says, how it says, and we'll see what happens. I can't promise nothing, but let me say this. If you open your heart to the herd, if you get yourself in touch with your inner earth pony, the herd will accept you. You make it sound like it's a cult. Tain't no cult, Twi. Tain't nothing like that. You just gotta follow the rules. The rules? They're all in that there letter. But the biggest is no magic. Tain't like tradition and winter wrap up. This is serious. And you were fumming with me for weeks after winter wrap up?
Said Twilight with a little worried smile.
Fuming. Oh, there's just one thing though, sugar. You aren't what? How do I put this? Aren't having that time of the year no more. Hey, Jay, what in Equestria? Just asking, Twi. Tain't nothing about things that been known getting a little intense at times.
Twilight looked down at the sealed envelope. What had she gotten herself into? Later that evening, Twilight was reading the letter. She'd almost left it too late, but by the instructions in the letter, she had to be at the pond near Fluttershy's cottage on the east side before midnight. It said not to tell any pony, and that included some non-ponies like Spike and Owlicious, and come au naturel. Ponies don't wear much clothing, but Twilight couldn't see harm in wearing a neck-strap bag. It was an old one, quite worn, but she loaded it up with the letter and the map.
Better safe than sorry,
she said to herself as she trotted out the door. The journey to the allotted place was uneventful. As she passed through the darkened, empty streets, she realized that this might be the vernal equinox. High up above was the bright full moon hanging in the clear skies. As her eyes adjusted to the gloom, it occurred to her how strange and alien the perfectly safe and sane Ponyville looked at night. Somehow primal and primitive. It was still warm at the back end of the summer, but soon winter would be approaching once more, and in a few short months the ground would be frozen and white. There was a certain bite in the air, and she realized her breath was steaming, as were her flanks. She snapped out of her reverie as she neared the pond. In the monochrome fuzzy semi-darkness, she could see the distinct shapes dotted across the clearing. They were ponies.
Hello, everyone.
She began, but there was a terrifying whinny from one of the locals that made her stop. Another whinny, this time with an accompanying snort and a shake of her head.
This is strange,
thought Twilight to herself.
Okay, no talking.
Twilight resolved to play this strange little game. She would apply her intellect. If they wanted to play some strange mute game, she would play along. She trotted into the group, looking around her. The ponies mostly ignored her. She realized she didn't recognize any of them. There was a white unicorn with what looked like a black mane, but it was very hard to tell in the darkness. It couldn't have been purple, because Rarity would never get herself that filthy. There was a large stallion. He looked black in the half-light. He was huge, a hulking monster, and he stamped and snorted, tossing his head to and fro as she passed. He didn't seem to like her. She wondered where he'd come from. Where did any of these ponies come from? Out of town? Which town? She looked lime green, but the colors were deceptive, if not elusive. A lime green unicorn bent her head and cropped the grass. She was too dusty and dirty, sweaty, and marked with grime. A cream-colored earth pony idly chewed at the unicorn's mane in a friendly grooming session. They snorted and bucked as she approached, angrily pawing the ground with a forehoof. "Stay away," said the silent command. Twilight obliged.
What was this?
This didn't make any sense, she wailed to herself. All these ponies were crazy. Suddenly, there was a proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. An orange earth pony, long blonde mane and tail, stood proudly underneath an apple tree, gazing up at the stars.
Applejack,
thought Twilight to herself, and she raced up the hill to her friend. At least it had looked like her friend. Applejack usually had her hair done up in braids. This whirling fierce creature, this alpha mare, had a wild unkept mane and tail that whipped around freely in the cool night air as she spun and kicked, snorting and neighing aggressively. Twilight backed up, but felt her rump hit a tree. The not Applejack tore into her and snapped her teeth, not around her neck, nor to tear into her flesh, but to snap the bag strap. With a fierce intensity and the mad rolling eyes, the spectre of the equine power and drive ripped off the offending article of Twilight and threw it to the ground, where she attacked it like it was a wild animal. After dealing with the bag, the enraged pony turned to Twilight and reared up, kicking her legs, splaying her ears back, and neighing in a guttural roar that sent Twilight packing. As she ran, terrified, through the herd, she found herself harried and kicked and bitten until she was finally plunged almost headfirst into the lake, where she sank beneath the surface. Tripping, head, hooves, and flank dug into the fetid bottom. When she pulled herself up, spluttering and breathing hard, the herd had quieted down, and the assorted ponies were once again chewing grass, grooming, or just standing. She staggered out of the pond, stinking of mud and covered in algae, and collapsed on the bank. She lay there for several minutes, just breathing, getting herself back together, and trying to work out what was going on. None of this made any sense. Hot breath on her neck. She raised her head fearfully, but the gesture was friendly. A young mare, several years her junior, had taken up an interest. She lifted her head and looked at the pony inquisitively. The pony mirrored the move, and they stopped there for a few seconds, breathing each other's breath before the younger squealed and snorted, tossing her head up and down. "Come," said the command. Twilight got up, and again the pony squealed and whickered, tossing her head. "Come, this way, with me." Twilight followed. She trotted through the group, her tail held high and ready for aggressive behavior, eyes rolling slightly as she sought to keep every pony in view. Her escort stopped. She'd stopped. Her escort turned around and faced her. Twilight watched, befuddled, as the younger mare bent to crop grass. She came up with a few blades of grass in her muzzle and chewed it methodically. Twilight watched as the earth pony repeated the gesture. The pony dropped her head, snorted, and muttered in a low, desultory tone that said, "Why don't you eat and crop some more?" Twilight did as she was bid. She didn't normally eat grass straight off the root. It wasn't really done in Canterlot. But for some reason tonight, the grass tasted heavenly, like fine wine. It was slick with dew. It had been trampled on by hoof, splashed with mud, and yet it tasted divine. What did it mean? She was still half off in reverie when she felt a few tentative bites at her mane and neck. The mare was grooming her. She'd read about this in the olden times, before magic, before the devices they now had. Ponies would groom each other with their mouths. She snorted and whinnied slightly at the shock, but soon she sank into the kind of blissful slumber as a strange pony, her new friend perhaps. No, herd mate, that was the feeling. Saw to the tangles and mess. Instinctively she reached out her own muzzle and took a bite of the pony. She chewed, much like she would chew the grass, and she felt the knots and detritus. She filtered it out with her lips and teeth, and bit again and again, nipping and grinding and working at the mane and the neck of the pony in this strange, sensual, close kind of massage that only a pony could give and mutually enjoy. Finally, she stopped. She was surrounded by ponies on all sides. The herd was complete, as the last few members arrived and took their positions loosely situated in the group. She could almost feel it. They accepted her. This must be what Applejack meant, Twilight thought to herself. The herd had accepted me, and it had. The herd was a strange, ecliptic group of ponies, young and old, male and female. There were unicorns, she noticed, but no Pegasi. She wondered idly whether there was anything deliberate about that, but reasoned it was probably because not using magic was the usual state of affairs, even for unicorns. But not using wings for a Pegasus was rather more abnormal. There was a commotion. At once, the herd was alert and ready. 100 heads came up, 100 pairs of ears and eyes searched for the intrusion or the predator. There didn't seem to be anything, but whatever it had been, it was enough. With a rumble of thunder and the distinct sounds of hoof hitting the ground, the herd moved off, taking Twilight with it. The run was wild. The run was free. The herd surged over the hills and swarmed down into the valleys, moving as one. This was like the running of the leaves, she realized, that they'd had a few short weeks ago. But this time, there was no competition. There was only the herd. She had been talking to Applejack before the running of the leaves, and Applejack had waxed her philosophical on what it meant to be an earth pony.
"'Tain't right none that some of you unicorns go around saying we ain't got no magic, Twi. 'Tain't like that at all,"
AJ had said.
"Oh, I know,"
Twilight had said.
"I read all about it in the libraries of Canterlot. Unicorns like myself, we can channel and use raw magic for all sorts of uses. But we're far from being the only magical beings in Equestria." "You say that, but I don't think you quite understand it." "I understand it quite well, thank you,"
she said, huffing, but AJ had motioned her to calm down.
"'Tain't like that neither, Twi. That's 'cause you're a unicorn. You spend all your time in your own head. Take Rainbow Dash. She's a mite bigger than a bird, but she can fly right nice. Pegasus ponies can also make other things in the vicinity light enough to fly. That right there is Pegasus magic, Twilight."
Applejack had said with a rounded sarsaparilla.
"They have magic of the air in the bones. We earth ponies, we got the magic of the earth." "What's that mean?"
Twilight had asked.
I may get to show you one day soon.
The Earth Pony had said. Twilight closed her eyes, remembering, as she felt oft unused muscles strain under her hide with the exertion. After the running of the leaves, Applejack had come back to her and tried to explain.
It's like we're a part of the earth, Twilight.
Applejack had said.
We can feel the movement of the seasons beneath our hooves. It's earth ponies that made the leaves fall with earth pony magic. We'd pull the world along as much as those Pegasi kick clouds about the sky. Y'all got it too. We all do. But it's easier for an earth pony to feel it.
Twilight hadn't known what to say.
What do you mean? You cast a spell with your body?
Applejack had shook her head.
Oh no, we are the spell. With every beat of our hooves, we move the earth. With every breath of our bodies, we fuel the wind. When we die, we go back down to the earth to grow plants to feed the animals.
Twilight had sapped at her sarsaparilla in silence, and Applejack had moved on, leaving a confused unicorn behind her. But now, Twilight stilled her mind as she galloped. Around her thundered the herd. She could reach out with her magic if she chose so, but she remembered AJ's strict, stern admonishment. No magic. Instead, she turned her attention first inwards and then outwards. She felt the earth beneath her hooves. She felt her herd mates all around her, their every muscle twitch, their every direction change, their every tail flick. She could almost... The herd was larger than she was. She was a pony, but she was part of the herd, one among many. A part of the greater, a part of the whole. Her mind exploded outwards in a flurry of light and sound. Suddenly she wasn't part of the herd. She was the herd. Hundreds of hooves, tails, legs, manes. The herd moved as one, fierce, joyful, proud. It ate up the miles beneath it as it moved on its own course towards its own destination, for its own reasons. She could feel it now. Twilight could feel the whole earth beneath her hooves, like pinpricks of light, bouncing from each touch and expanding in concentric circles. The interplay of staccato impacts lit the topology of her mind in a fiery blaze of majesty as she felt the herd become one with the cosmos. It wasn't the herd that moved, but the earth itself. She felt the world turn beneath her, dragging a billion-year being through space with almost gentle touches, easing it in a familiar passage from summer to autumn to winter, and finally to spring once more. The world turned, and she turned with it. With the wind in her mane and the stars in her eyes, she exulted in the freedom of just being a pony. Her mind calmed, expanded, as she gave up her sense of self to the herd without a second thought. They thundered onwards throughout the night, moving the land in an ancient dance that was as old as time itself, and would continue until there were no more hoofs to strike the ground, until there were no more herds, and the world grew silent. When the herd stopped, it was back at the lake. The unicorn stampeded through the herd mates to the water, where she dropped her head and drank. The water was muddy and tasted of sweat and pony, but it was the best drink she'd ever had. When she had her fill, she turned back to the bank and trotted through the massed bodies until she found a comfortable spot. There were ponies all around her, her herd. She felt safe. The feeling was going now, that strange feeling of belonging, as more and more of the herd left. Finally, it was just her and a few stragglers. Her original first herd mate trotted up and sniffed her hindquarters and flank, seemingly checking it and apparently finding satisfaction. She squealed and about turned, galloping off. Twilight watched her go in silence and then headed home herself. She would need a bath, some clothes, to brush her hair, to do the normal sorts of things that civilized ponies did. But maybe, just maybe, he'd come out on further nights, under the moon, to run wild and free. Twilight stared at the letter as the sun came up. She spent all night on it.
Dear Princess Celestia, I learned tonight that friendship is something deep inside us all. We need friends, good friends in a way, more intimate and primal than I could have ever suspected. The midnight run, as my friends call it, has shown me something that is the closest thing to sacred that I have ever found. It's not friendship in the current meaning of the word, but something much stronger. A bond. I can't let them down. That's why you'll never read this. Your favorite pupil, Twilight Sparkle.
She rolled the letter up neatly into a bundle and held it with her magic over the candle, watching it in silence as the flames devoured it. The end.